What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here. Welcome to day 310 of the 365-day graphic novel review challenge. Today, I want to talk to you about Ultimate Thor by Jonathan Hickman and Carlos Pacheco. This is a 4-issue miniseries that came out right after Ultimatum, when the Ultimate Universe was kind of sort of being revamped and shaken up a little bit. This is a prequel that kind of shows us a little bit of what was going on with Thor immediately before we are introduced to him in Mark Millar and Brian Hitch's Ultimates run. And I guess I want to start there. As a prequel, I'm not sure if this story works. It's been a long time since I've read the Ultimates by Millar and Hitch, but I feel like some of this is a little inconsistent with the Ultimate stuff, especially when you get to the character of Loki. And I don't think that's too much of a spoiler. He's on the back cover here, but he is in this story, and this may be a little bit of a spoiler for the Ultimates, but in the second half of that run by Millar and Hitch, Loki does play a pretty big part there. And I feel like when you look at the character motivations of Loki in this story, and then you look at the way he's acting in the Ultimates run, I don't think that they really feel like the same character. And even if you ignore the Ultimates by Millar and Hitch, if you just look at this 4-issue miniseries, I have a lot of problems with the characterization of Loki. In fact, that might be my biggest problem with the story, which is unfortunate because it is where most of the meat of this story lies. So spoilers for this story for the rest of this video. If you are interested in reading this, I would recommend you go ahead and turn this video off right now because I'm going to be spoiling pretty much everything about the book from here on out. So this story takes place in technically 3 different time periods. We've got a little bit of stuff in the present day, which is actually immediately before we are introduced to Thor in the Ultimates. So it's actually not the present day for when this was coming out. This does not take place immediately after Ultimatum, which I thought it did whenever I was reading this the first time, and that was a little bit confusing because you've got Brian Braddock, who is Captain Britain in the Ultimate Universe and in the Marvel Universe, and his father. They're talking about how they think that this guy is insane, and they've got Thor under lock and key, and they think that he needs psychological review, and it turns out, and it takes me like an issue or two reading this the first time to figure out, wait a minute, this is all taking place a few years ago in the Ultimate Universe timeline. And once you have that figured out, this reads a little bit easier, it makes a little bit more sense, but you've got that time period where these guys are trying to figure out if this guy is really Thor or if he's insane, which is a big plot point in Millar and Hitch's Ultimates run. But then you've got stuff that happened ages ago, which is a long, long time ago on Asgard, where Thor, Loki, and Baldur, they are all younger and in happier times where they are at war with the Frost Giants. And then you've got stuff going on in 1939 where a group of Nazis team up with the surviving Frost Giants to invade Asgard and cause Ragnarok. And probably my favorite aspect of this book is the reveal of Baron Zemo. Baron Zemo is in the story, but he is not the same kind of Baron Zemo that we have in the main Marvel Universe. I won't spoil who that is, but it is kind of a cool reveal, but it is also tied to some of my problems with the character of Loki. And I guess I will go ahead and spoil it since I've already given the spoiler warning, but it turns out that Baron Zemo is Loki in 1939. And that's a really awesome reveal because if you know anything about the Marvel Universe, you're thinking that this is actually Baron Zemo because I don't believe we ever got the real Baron Zemo in the Ultimate Universe. I know we didn't get it before this story. We may have gotten him after this story, but we did not get the real Baron Zemo before. So when you're reading this, you're thinking that this is the real Baron Zemo, and then he takes his mask off, and it's Loki. And I thought that was a really cool reveal. My problem with Loki in this book is that nothing that he does makes any kind of sense. In a lot of ways, he feels like Darth Vader from the Star Wars prequels, where all of his actions hinge on character motivations that are very flimsy and don't make a whole lot of sense. You could say a lot of the same criticisms about Loki here that you could say about Darth Vader in the Star Wars prequels. Here, Loki is good friends with Thor and Baldur. He is an agent of Asgard. He's loyal to his father, loyal to everybody. He's a nice guy. They describe him as being very grim a couple of times, and one joke, not really a joke, but something that I thought was kind of funny here, is that the Warriors 3 in the Ultimate Universe is actually Baldur, Thor, and Loki, and not Hogun, Volstagg, and Fandral. They do show up in this story fighting in a tournament, but they are not the Warriors 3, and I thought that was kind of a neat little twist. The things that I like the best about the Ultimate Universe are when they change things up so that they are different than the Marvel Universe, but there's still a hint of the Marvel Universe that we know and love. That's when I love the Ultimate Universe the most. And we get that a couple times, like with the reveal of who Baron Zemo is, and the Warriors 3 is not the Warriors 3 that we know and love. But anyway, in the ages ago time period, they don't specifically say when it is or how long ago it was. Loki is a nice guy, and then at some point, Asgard triumphs in their war against the Frost Giants, and Loki keeps talking to Thor about how Ragnarok is coming, the end of days is coming, we're all going to die, it's going to be really bad, and Thor keeps saying, no, that's not going to happen, we're not going to die, and then Odin's like, yeah, we are, we're all going to die, Ragnarok is coming, and then Loki, his mom is one of the Frost Giants, or she's at least allied with them, because she looks like a normal humanoid Asgardian. She doesn't look like one of the Frost Giants, who all basically look like giant, monstrous versions of Iceman from the X-Men. But she is one of them. And apparently, in the Ultimate Universe, Loki's origin is a little bit different than it traditionally is portrayed in most other stories. He is not the stepbrother of Thor. He is actually the half-brother of Thor. And let me see if I get this timeline correct, and I'm still not entirely sure, because a lot of this is given to us in dialogue. But Odin got together with this lady from the Frost Giant side of things. We'll call her Farbati, which I believe is her name in the Marvel Universe, although I don't know if that's her given name here. He gets with her, and then he impregnates her, but then he spurns her, according to Loki, and then she goes off with the Frost Giants, and then sometime later, she gives the baby to the Asgardians as part of a peace treaty. It's very fourth worldy from DC Comics, except it doesn't make any sense, because while they are talking about this being part of a peace treaty, they are fighting a war with the Frost Giants. It makes absolutely no sense, because if there was a peace treaty, then it clearly got broken a long time ago. But that's how Loki came to be with the Asgardians, so he is Odin's son, but he is not Thor's full brother. And then after this war is won, the Frost Giants, they come and are living in Asgard, which seems like a recipe for disaster, but hey, what do I know? So Loki goes to visit his mom, and then he says, I want to make you happy. I will do anything to make you happy, which is weird because he hasn't known this woman for most of his life. It seems like he was a little tiny baby when the Frost Giants gave him to Odin, and now he's trying to reunite with his mother, who he doesn't really know from anybody, and it seems weird that he is willing to do anything, literally anything, to make her happy. And she says, okay, I want you to bring me the MacGuffin of these stories, the Norn Stones. And the Norn Stones is how Loki is able to lead a group of Nazis into Asgard in 1939. So he says, okay, I'll do it. And that's how he becomes a bad guy. That's how he turns to the dark side. This is probably my least favorite version of Loki's turn to the dark side that I've ever seen. There are different ways that it's portrayed. I've liked them in different levels. I really like the one that we got to see in the Blood Brothers miniseries I talked about yesterday. I liked the way he was portrayed in Marvel Thor Season 1, the graphic novel. I like that. Okay. Another favorite version of Loki I like quite a bit is from The Mighty Avenger, where he's not really a bad guy at all. He just keeps showing up and talking about how he got into some books that he wasn't supposed to get into. So there are different ways that you can have Loki be portrayed. You could have him be just slightly mischievous. You could have him be just really evil and sinister, or you could have him slowly progress into being a bad guy. This just kind of has him all of a sudden trying to get on his mom's good side. He just becomes a bad guy. And then at one point, he accidentally kills Baldur, and then Baldur is like, yeah, you're saying you're sorry, but you don't mean it. And then Loki takes another arrow and shoots Baldur with a smile on his face. It doesn't make any sense. And then we find out that Loki's mom actually died before we get to 1939. And for some reason, Loki is still evil. I don't understand it. If the only reason that he's doing anything that he does is to make his mom happy and grow closer to her and form a relationship with her, then why is he doing any of this stuff in 1939 or in the present day, circa Mark Millar and Brian Hitch's Ultimates run? That's what I was saying about how this doesn't feel consistent with that. He's very subtle. He's manipulating events behind the scenes. That's not really the way he acts here. Here, he uses much more very upfront force in his attacks on Asgard, which we get to see in a couple of time periods. But I don't really understand why he does what he does after his mom is dead, other than just, well, it's too late for me to turn back now. I might as well just keep on this path, but I don't know why he would want to keep on that path once his mom is dead. This character and his actions and his motivations is what holds this entire book together, and unfortunately, very little of it makes any kind of sense. This is something that I really wanted to like, and it's not bad, but it's not really very good either, especially when you look at it as part of the larger Ultimate Universe, which you can choose not to do that, or you can choose to do that. Sometimes I will say, yeah, let's just ignore the rest of the universe, especially if it's something like the Marvel Universe as a whole, where there are thousands of stories, and it's really difficult for any human being to keep up with every story for a character. So if one particular story contradicts another one, that's fine. I can just review this thing on its own. But in the case of the Ultimate Universe, where there weren't that many appearances of Ultimate Thor, it wouldn't have been that hard for Jonathan Hickman to go and reread Mark Millar and Brian Hitch's Ultimates run before doing this story. And I feel like if he had, this might have played out a little differently. I feel like he would have looked at this and said, yeah, this isn't really consistent with that. So anyway, I don't think this is bad, but I do think that it's problematic. There are some things about it I really like. I love the artwork, and there are some of the ideas in the story that I like quite a bit. Like I said, I like the idea that Loki is actually Baron Zemo. And I like the time period idea of switching back and forth between ages ago, 1939, and the present day. That's something that I talked about in the God Butcher storyline. I really like the sense of scale. And with a character like Thor, who is thousands upon thousands of years old, you can play on this idea of scale. You can have something happen a long time ago and then bring it back into present day. And that's something you can't exactly do with most other characters in the Marvel Universe. And I like that here. I just wish that the story that was using this technique was a little bit better. So those are my thoughts on Ultimate Thor. I hope that you guys liked this video, and if you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I'll be back tomorrow with a different video. In the meantime, you guys have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.